You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
And for anyone who doesn't like when our intros are long, I'm sorry, but this one's going to be long because I'm Minnesotan and I'm the daughter of an immigrant and I have some thoughts right now. And it's our podcast, so I'm going to talk about those thoughts. I do want to say also, this rant might be outdated by the time we release this because we're recording it on February 3rd, 2026. And who knows what fresh hell or God willing new progress will have happened by the time it's out or by the time you're listening. First and foremost, we are drinking some whiskey neat because fuck ice. Just so we're unequivocal about that. Keith Porter, Renee Good, and Alex Preddy have all been killed by ICE. Other people have been shot non-fatally. At least 6 people that we know of have died in ICE detention or as a result of interactions with ICE. And again, that's just what we know of. I'm positive that number is far, far higher. ICE is alleged to be sexually assaulting people as they're detaining them. They are taking selfies with them as like trophies, denying detainees medicine and medical care. There is now a measles outbreak at the detention center in Texas where there are children too young to be vaccinated. They're buying warehouses to make into detention centers. They just outright were like, yep, that's for people. They've detained indigenous Americans like the 4 men from the Oglala Sioux tribe in Minneapolis, which makes my brain want to explode.
Actually explode.
And this is all obviously extremely horrifying. I don't want to act like it's not, but I do want to acknowledge that Black, Indigenous, and other non-white communities have been experiencing this kind of terror in interactions with law enforcement, government agents, etc. forever. The Nazis actually modeled the Nuremberg race laws after Jim Crow laws in the United States. We inspired the Nazis, let that sink in. So as people are drawing all of these parallels to like the Nazis and other people are like, no, it's more like slave patrols. It's actually both because the Nazis based their practices on us. That's not to take away from the horror or the insanity of what's happening now. If you're white and you're scared right now for the first time, you should be. That's the correct feeling. But non-white communities have lived with this fear since always and have still shown up for each other and for us. So it's just crucial that we don't let that fear stop us from showing up for them and for each other. If you're a white person who's just waking up to this shit, like, listen, it takes us all different journeys to get there. My awakening, I feel like, happened too late in my life. We all have to have our moment. We're happy that you had it and that you're here. Play catch up. Take some action, recognize that you are still at much lower risk in your interactions with law enforcement and with ICE than your non-white counterparts. And that's not to say that everybody has to get out there and like put your body in the way of ICE. Like that's not realistic for a lot of people. You can still do lots of other stuff. You are not helpless. That is my point. Larkin did march in a protest. She and I have also, though, like both contacted our reps. I've been donating everywhere I can. Larkin's getting involved in community organizing. I'm going to go volunteer at a local org that's like combating food insecurity, which I was going to do anyway. But now I'm like, as an added bonus, I feel like it might help me kind of get to know the community and build more community around here. That's all stuff you can do. You can follow your local rapid response network, take baby steps, and just start getting involved. I just want to encourage people to do that. And I also highly recommend going back and listening to our allyship episode. It's episode 8, because Erica Vogel had some really great and inspiring advice about like activism and ways to get involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Larkin, any thoughts? I was going to throw it to you anyway. Like, I defer to you because I've always admired your like fearlessness around this kind of thing.
Goodness. First, I want to say exactly what Kate said. Like, I feel like a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork and kind of pushing new folks out by like overcorrecting rhetoric or gatekeeping or shaming people. We do not need that right now. So like you just bringing up the fact that, you know, we've been referring to these I was even doing it like Gestapo. We basically are dealing with Gestapo in our streets. And then to have people point out like you know, like, well, I mean, remember it started here. Yes, it did. It's like we're hiding behind another country's history. No, we did that.
I also think it's a very recognizable, like everybody knows what you're talking about when you say that. Not everybody knows about slave patrol, so I understand why people are using it because it is also, it's also accurate.
It's very accurate.
I'm not saying it's not like that.
And that's exactly what you said to me the first time, and I was like, I'm going to cling to that because that's really important. It's like that's maybe something that's easier to engage with. People see it, They understand it, they get it. So stop shutting people down. Like, Don't be a dick. Don't push them out of our corner, right? We need everybody here. If you're feeling really strong feelings. If you're sad, you're depressed, you're immobilized, hold space for yourself to be immobilized and overwhelmed and exhausted by all this. Take care of yourself. Listen to your friends when they're coming to you saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm crying all the time, I don't know what to do, I'm stressed. Don't jump down their throats. Don't jump down your own throat, but use that to focus and to that's where activism comes from, is rage and anger and injustice. So use that sadness, use that grief, sit with it, and then call a representative. Sit with it and then call your neighbors. Sit with it, go out and get a whistle. In Washington, we have the Washington Whistles Network. Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network is working in tandem with them. There's phone numbers and volunteer opportunities. Everybody that is listening to this and not listening to this, I know we have something to offer. That's my only call to action right now as the child of a minister and an activist. We need you, is all I'm saying, is we really need you. Don't hide behind your pain. We've got you.
Yeah.
We've got, Kate and I've got you.
Yes,
you can call us,
you.
text us, send us messages. We'll hold you up.
Amen. And I think it's like, you don't have to go out and be the person who finally brings an end to ICE, right? Like, that's not going to happen. There's no one person. Like, it's going to be long. It's going to be sustained. It's okay to take smaller steps. It's okay to just get involved where you can. As Larkin said, support your friends, support your neighbors, keep each other sane. The other thing I want to emphasize, just as someone from Minnesota, we're only seeing snapshots of big protests and big moments for the most part. But speaking to people who are living there, they are being constantly terrorized, and it is not new. It is not just since January. It has certainly escalated. But I made a Hannibal sketch about Hannibal eating an ICE agent in June when my mom died. Just some stories from the ground. My brother-in-law was aggressively tailgated by ICE with my nephew in the car. My sister is a teacher. She has been followed repeatedly by ICE while bringing food to families who are too frightened to leave their homes. She's also said that ICE agents are trying to get information about school bus routes by pretending to be parents and members of the community and asking teachers so they can follow buses of children. There are also reports that when they are releasing people from the detention center at Fort Snelling, which, by the way, used to be a literal concentration camp for the Dakota people. That's what the signage at Fort Snelling says, FYI. So when they are releasing people, they are essentially just releasing them into the woods behind Fort Snelling with no jackets, no phones, no credit cards, nothing, none of their stuff. Things have escalated also since Trump removed Bovino and signaled that he was going to de-escalate. It has not de-escalated. It has ramped up. So if you're looking for a good account to follow for updates, I highly recommend Lee Stedman, who is on Instagram at ghost_Lee19. The handle will be in the show notes. Lee posts daily updates multiple times a day, really doing so much work. That's how I've been learning a lot. This rant is almost over, but
no, you could keep going.
I know, but I have so much content to get to for this actual episode that I can't. So all that being said, I just want to say I'm incredibly proud of Minnesota for holding the line. I think some people are surprised by the fight that's coming out of Minnesotans, but they shouldn't be. Minnesota has been super organized since George Floyd's murder. They have maintained those networks, and their community is really strong. And you came in winter
to my house.
When the jokes write themselves, the place where people pride themselves on tolerating the cold. So yeah, they fucked around and they're finding out.
They're finding out.
So pip, you fascist fucks.
Exactly.
Like last week, rather than ask you to give us money on Patreon right now, we would like to ask you to give money to the ACLU or a nonprofit in Minnesota. I will drop links in the show notes. There's also a link tree in our bio on Instagram now. All right, rant over. Love you, Minnesota. Sorry if that was literally 20 minutes. I'll cut it down as much as I can. All right, so at the time this comes out, it will have just been Larkin's birthday. At the time we're recording it, her birthday is tomorrow. Hooray. Happy early birthday. This episode is not anything to do with your birthday, but I will be doing a bonus episode about Larkin's birthday in honor of it on Patreon this month, so stay tuned for that. There is another birthday coming up that I want to acknowledge, and that is the recipient of the first ever boy cat, Jake Lacey. His birthday is on Valentine's Day, February 14th, so a few days after this comes out. And to wish Jake a happy birthday, now it's ruined style, I wanted to very quickly talk about a couple of terrible things centered around the day and year that he was born. You're welcome. One of the most messed up things I found that happened on a Valentine's Day took place during World War II, and I cannot believe that I did not know about this before. On February 14th, 1945, Allied troops accidentally bombed Prague, mistaking it for Dresden, Germany. The U.S. Air Force dropped 152 tons of bombs on Prague by mistake, killing 701 people and injuring 1,184 more, all of whom were civilians. They also destroyed historical sites. They left 11,000 people homeless. And it was chalked up to like a navigational equipment malfunction, like their equipment malfunction, and they had to navigate by hand, and they messed up. And they bombed Prague.
What?
There are also some conspiracy theories that, like, it was on purpose. I don't know about that. But when I learned this fact, I was like, that is outrageous. How have I never heard this?
No, that is not ringing any bells for me.
And then here's a ruin about his birth year. So on January 28th, 1986, just a couple of weeks before Jake was born, the Challenger space shuttle exploded 73 seconds after launch, tragically killing all 7 people on board. I remember growing up really freaked out by that. Like, it just really was, because I was born, he and I are like less than a year apart. I remember just growing up with that story and being really like disturbed by it. I don't know why. I was like never planning to be an astronaut, so I don't know why I was like so terrified.
It hit you so hard. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah, and like people were like, the people on board were like teachers and scientists, and everyone saw it happen. So it was just like this horror of watching it. Anyway, happy birthday, Jake Lacey.
Happy birthday.
And thank you to Jake Lacey for just continuing to be such a cool dude. He and I have continued to message a little bit, not a ton. He's continued to respond to me a little bit, and he's just like really nice and funny, and I keep expecting him not to respond. Like, I think I've driven him off, and then he'll come back like a few weeks later and be like, hey, sorry, I meant to get back to you sooner. And I'm like, you are literally celebrity. I don't expect you to keep
do not expect you to talk to me.
Now let's really get into it.
Okay.
An hour into this podcast. At the time we release this episode, we will be right in the middle of the Winter Olympics. Larkin, are you a big Olympics watcher?
Not really. I like it when it's on. I just never think like, oh, I got to get home
for the Olympics.
Got to put my program on. I do really enjoy it whenever it's on, though. Yeah, Winter Olympics are great.
I was going to ask if you have a preference.
I like the ice skating. It's very nail bitey. I'm very constantly worried. I'm like, that is so much
I am
air.
Too. It stresses me out. But I really love watching.
They're like, oh, he's going in for the quintuplet. This has never been attempted before. It's 15 spins and he lands on his head. It's very nerve-wracking, but it's great.
I have more like fond, cozy memories of the Winter Olympics because I feel like, you know, winter in Minnesota, we were all trapped inside kind of anyway. And I remember a lot of like watching ice skating in the evening with my parents. Yeah. Summer Olympics, I feel like I have more memories of kind of watching alone just because I was home from school and like I'd put on gymnastics and stuff while in the background. I do distinctly remember watching Carrie Strug's vault where she vaulted on her broken ankle or sprained ankle or whatever it was, which is really messed up in a whole other way that I'm not even getting into in this episode, because as I wrote this episode, I was like, holy shit, there is so much here. There are about 1 million things in this topic that I'm like, that could be their own episode. So yeah, this is a lot of information. I will still be touching on a lot of stuff only lightly. You can always pause the episode and come back. I do that with stuff, but just buckle up.
Here we go.
Because here we go. All right. So the Olympics are a longstanding tradition, a showcase of the best athletes the world has to offer, right? Well, the best athletes the world has to offer who can actually afford to be there, because the Olympics doesn't pay. At least not directly. Individual countries, Olympic committees, and other sports organizations offer some monetary compensation to medalists. So the 3 people in whatever sport actually make it to the podium. And then they also provide some stipends and funding for, you know, equipment, medical care, whatever. But just to get to the point where you can try and qualify for the Olympics is expensive as hell. And all that means is that the Olympics historically have been quite elitist. And where elitism goes, as we know, racism inevitably follows. We got a taste of that in Larkin's excellent episode about Jim Thorpe, the love of our lives.
Yeah, seriously.
If you haven't listened to that episode, it's episode 17, not one to miss. The Olympics, as many people probably know, originated in ancient Greece. We don't know exactly when they started because the actual history of the Olympics is very intertwined with Greek myth, which is kind of interesting. The Olympic Games probably started about 3,000 years ago. They probably weren't founded by Heracles, aka Hercules, the demigod son of Zeus. So
what do you mean?
These are the facts we're parsing out. We do know that by the end of the 6th century BCE, there were at least 4 major Greek games, sporting events being held. The Olympics by far was the largest one of these, and they were held every 4 years. They were so famous, the Olympics, that Greek historians actually started measuring time by them. So the 4-year period between the Olympic Games was called an Olympiad, and that's what was used by many historians in late antiquity rather than individual years.
Dude.
So that was the significance of the Olympic Games. And I had to look up what late antiquity was because Britannica was getting too smart for me. And to quote Britannica's own definition of it, classical antiquity is the historical period spanning from the output of ancient Greek author Homer in the 8th century BCE to the decline of the Roman Empire in the 5th century ACE. So that's antiquity.
Okay.
And then I got sidetracked looking up the difference between BC and BCE and AD and CE. And I got
Me too. I can't.
I will tell you. BCE
Okay.
and CE stand for before Common Era and Common Era, and they're just the non-religious terms for BC and AD.
Right.
The other major Greek games were the Pythian games at Delphi, the Nemean games at Nemea, and the Isthmian games near Corinth. The games were typically held in honor of various gods. So like the Pythian games were in honor of Apollo, and they were a mix of athletic competitions and artistic competitions because Apollo was like the god of music and drama and all of that stuff. So they had like poetry, music, competitions, drama. And this isn't what it was, but I pictured immediately when I read about this, a race where it's like run 100 meters and then recite an ode and then swim and then carve a statue. And I wish that's what it was.
That would be incredible. Carve in the nude and then take off running as fast as you
Right. So anyway, the Olympics were in honor of Big Daddy God Zeus himself. The first recorded Olympic champion was a cook named Coroebus of Elis, who won a sprint race in 776 BCE. This race was known as the Stade, and at some point the track on which this race was held was also called a stade, and that is the origin of the word stadium.
No.
Yeah. More races were added to the games as time went on, as well as wrestling and the pentathlon in 708 BCE. At the time, the pentathlon was a 5-event competition that included a foot race, long jump, discus throw, javelin throw, and then it ended with a wrestling match between the two competitors who did the best in those prior 4 events. The modern pentathlon has events, interestingly, that are based on skills needed by battlefield couriers.
I remember
which is
reading
cool.
about this. Yeah.
Which are fencing, shooting, swimming, running, and horseback riding. And this is just something I found really interesting. For the horseback riding part, they have to draw a random horse they have never ridden before and then show jump it.
Whoa.
Like, they have to jump a horse they have no prior relationship with.
Because you'd have to probably in a battle
You
situation,
just
right?
grab whatever horse is there. But that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in the relationship between like a horse and a rider
Oh my God,
goes
yeah.
into like trust and like knowing how the horse responds to like, well, no. And I'm sure they're exclusively very well-trained horses.
Oh,
but
right.
still.
Here's a wild horse.
Wild. Yeah. Here's a Mustang. You have to tame it like Brad Pitt in Legends of the Fall, and then you got to ride it. I know Brad Pitt's problematic. Ugh.
Wow.
Anyway, the ancient Greeks weren't doing all the riding and the shooting and all of that. They were running and wrestling and throwing shit. And yes, apart from some competitions that required partial armor, they did it all naked.
Dongs
They
out.
were nude, dongs out. The goal was really to show every inch of their physicality, like all of the muscles. They wanted to be gawked at, essentially. They wanted to be like, I am like Hercules. I am Perseus, whatever. Real shame that wasn't still the policy in Jim Thorpe's day. I will never stop being relentlessly and respectfully horny for Jim Thorpe.
We're not sorry about it.
When athletes wrestled or participated in pankration, a kind of MMA style mix of like boxing and wrestling, they were also covered in oil.
Oh yeah. Just like the Greeks.
Horny time, just like the Greeks. The pankration had only 2 rules: no biting and no gouging. It was also discouraged to attack your opponent's genitals, but wasn't strictly against the rules.
But it still happened. I bet it. It's just right there for the grabbing.
They're right out there. What are you going to do? You can't gouge them or bite them, but you can yank them.
Takes like 10 pounds of pressure, my guy. Youch.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine running like 500 meters with your hang dangle just slapping about. And imagine.
Me either.
I mean, I'm sure there was cheering, but like just imagine like a silent run of like 50 nude men just past you. The sound that you would hear.
Also, boxers who couldn't be separated could opt for something called, I shit you not, climax with a K. Climax with a
K.
Climax was a system where one fighter was given a free hit and then the other person got a free hit and you flipped a coin to see who went first. And so like if you lose and your opponent like knocks you out or kills you, as sometimes would happen in these games, on the first punch, you're shit out of luck. Better luck next time, unless you're dead.
So what do you mean, like, couldn't be separated? Like, they're...
It was just like blow for blow. Like it was clear that they weren't gonna, no one was gonna
Oh,
win.
like it was...
The winner wasn't clear. Like
No
it
one,
was just
no one
like
is
they were too
inside
evenly
one another.
matched. No.
And they just like, would you like a climax?
You boys have been going at it hard for a good long time. Would you like to climax?
Would you like to climax? I think
Would you appreciate climax at this time?
we all would appreciate for you
To opt for climax.
to opt for climax. Jesus.
I found some conflicting evidence on whether or not athletes were paid for winning at the Olympics. Britannica says no, so I trust them. Winning athletes received a wreath or a garland, and of course, glory in their hometowns. And their hometowns would often compensate them generously for winning at the games, and they tended to earn a lot of money at other competitions leading up to the Olympics. These competitors were usually full-time athletes. They were just constantly training for all these events, so very similar to today. Also, like today, there was some elitism, so only freeborn Greeks were allowed to participate in the games. Slaves were prohibited. Women also could not compete in the Olympics. In most areas, women and girls weren't training for any athletic competition at all. But of course, the exception to this was Sparta. Spartan women were training and competing in local sporting competitions regularly, but they weren't able to compete in the Olympics. I'm saving sexism for another episode. That's one of the things that got hacked from this one. So I'm not even getting into that now.
Let's just not even dive in. All right.
It's its own 5 episodes. Okay. So it was all fun and literal games for the Greeks until the middle of the 2nd century BCE when they lost their independence to Rome. As you mentioned in your episode about gynecology, the Romans really looked down on the Greeks. They were very snobby about them, even though they copied all their fucking art. They were like, we just like all your statues and stuff, but... And getting naked and wrestling in front of a crowd is so boorish and beneath us. But the Romans did recognize the political value of the games and the surrounding festivals, so they kind of kept them up. Emperor Augustus, who was Julius Caesar's great-nephew and adopted son, hosted games for Greek citizens in Rome, but he didn't let them be like in the Circus Maximus, which was like the big stadium in Rome. He had them knock up a temporary stadium next to it and was like, that's where the Greeks can go and do their stuff.
Do their silly little games.
Sequester them over there.
Their genitals are always out. It's weird.
What was their criticism of the Greeks in the gynecology episode? That they were so obsessed with them because they had so much venereal disease?
Yeah, they were like, of course they're interested in studying genitals because they're always full of venereal disease. Don't you just want to know about your parts?
You're not curious at all about your penis?
No? Okay.
Or about vaginas or like what's going on? You have no venereal disease? Rome, really?
You've never had an STI. Got it.
Sure. Speaking of snobby Romans, Emperor Nero was a big supporter of these contests. And I want to do a bonus episode about him because his story is fucking wild. So I'm going to try not to go on like a major tangent about him here, but this story did make me giggle about the Olympics. Nero is described by PBS as sensitive and handsome. The bust of him that is next to this description has a chin strap beard, so I don't know about that, but to each their own. He seems like someone who started maybe with good intentions, but he was also both spoiled and dominated by his mother. Bad combo. Never gonna be a good time.
Nope.
So he developed a notoriously debaucherous lifestyle, kind of like Caligula. Of course, legend has it that he played the fiddle while Rome burned in a fire that maybe he started himself.
Yeah, what a kind, gentle, handsome man.
It sounds like he just sang, by the way, during the burning of Rome. He didn't play the fiddle.
God,
we don't know for sure if he started it.
Modern day smoking a cigarette and drinking coffee outside of a cafe.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Because he loved music and theater and horse racing. And he frequently bragged about how good he was and that he was like the best at all of these things, like better than any of the legendary Greeks. So he was like,
oh my God.
I'm a better writer than Homer. I'm a better actor than Thespis. Like, fucking the worst, blah, 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 blah. So he decides he wants to participate in the Olympics. And first off, he had them move the date of the Olympics to fit his travel schedule. And if you'll recall, the dates of the Olympics are very important. It's how Greeks are keeping
it's the
time.
Calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, with your chin strap beard.
Yeah. But they did it. He also had them add a poetry competition that, of course, he entered. To assure his victory in the chariot race, instead of using the traditional 4-horse chariot team, he used 10 horses.
Excuse me?
Even though he had rigged the race in favor of himself.
Oh my God.
He lost control of his chariot and fell off before the finish line, but still managed to have himself declared the winner and took crowns in every event that he competed in. Sound like anyone we know?
Yeah.
Who might be running our country at the moment?
Maybe.
I won.
I won.
I won.
I
Everybody
won.
saw it. I won.
You
with
saw
my
that.
10 horses.
How embarrassing.
So fucking embarrassing. And despite this sham of a year, the Olympic Games continued until 393 CE, when Christian Emperor Theodosius I outlawed any pagan celebrations of any kind. So competitions and festivals kind of continued for a while, but eventually the Olympics died out, and Olympia as a site, which is where it was held, was abandoned, and all of its buildings were destroyed by like earthquakes, natural disasters, and they were buried beneath the ground, and no one knew where it was. It was rediscovered by English traveler Richard Chandler in 1776, and then dug up by German archaeologists about 100 years later. So the Olympic Games weren't held again for over 1,500 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The revival of the Games in the 1800s was primarily a team effort between Englishman William Penny Brooks, very English, and Frenchman with a very French name, Pierre de Coubertin, most British, most French named men. Team effort, maybe a slight mischaracterization, because from what I could read, Brooks was like really passionate about this. He was like, we need to bring back the Olympic Games. I think it would be really great, really fun for everybody. He educated Coubertin about this, and then Coubertin took the idea and pitched it as his own in 1892, from what I could tell. Initially, there really wasn't much support for the idea. People were like, why? But Coubertin kept trying, and eventually he convinced enough people, and the games were held in Athens in April of 1896. It was just the Summer Olympics at this time. The Winter Olympics first took place in 1924 on February 4th. Your birthday.
Really?
First Winter Olympics. Yes.
Hey.
And I found that out about halfway through this research, and I was like, fuck, yes, it all comes together. So the first Olympic Congress was held in Paris in 1894, 2 years before the Games, and this Congress established the International Olympic Committee, or IOC. Larkin knows them well. Remember them. We're going to talk about them a lot. There have been 10 presidents of the IOC since it was established, 9 of which have been white men. The current president is the first ever woman in the job. Her name is Christy Coventry. She's from Zimbabwe, and she's also white.
Oh.
But progress.
Yeah.
So the IOC establishes rules for the games. They choose which cities it's going to be held in. The IOC is supposed to be neutral in this decision making. But in 1998, a scandal erupted when it was revealed that IOC members had received massive amounts of bribes to advance Salt Lake City's bid to host the games in 2002. They were just taking all sorts of money and trips and like all sorts of shit. This scandal resulted in the ousting of 10 IOC members and the sanctioning of 10 more. And when it was revealed that the Salt Lake City incident was not isolated, big shocker.
Surprise.
Bribery had also occurred in the selections of Nagano and Sydney. And then the IOC came out with a host of new guidelines, including age and term limits for its committee members, and then limits on the amount of like gifts that members can receive from applicant cities. So now for the ruinous meat of this episode. So as I said at the beginning, the fact that the games are unpaid and require tons of training means that many athletes are only able to participate because they or their families have wealth. And because we live in reality, we know that that means that athletes will predominantly be white, because generational wealth falls along race lines, certainly at least in this country. According to a 2017 study by University of Toronto professor D.W. Lawrence, racial and socioeconomic differences vary from sport to sport, which is to be expected. Before I continue with the study, I do want to caveat he only looked at athletes from the US, Britain, Australia, and Canada, but those are 4 countries that send a large number of athletes. So in those countries, more than 30% of both summer and winter Olympic participants were privately educated, which is a wealth indicator. Mm-hmm. Racial and wealth differences were more pronounced in the Winter Olympics, with 94.9% of the athletes from these countries being white in the Winter Olympics. The summer isn't much better, though, 81.7% whiteness. Access to wealth on both an individual and a country level also affects both participation and success rate in the games. So the wealth of your country and the wealth of yourself significantly affects whether or not you're going to be able to get into the Olympics and how well you do there.
See, wow.
Larkin, I feel like you have something to say.
Oh, it's just so, and like, yeah, it would make sense. When you said it, it makes sense to me. It's like kind of the fancier, like, oh, figure skating. We grew up with those kind of wealthier kids who are like, she has horses.
Right.
She ice skates.
Yeah. I mean, like, even like track, which seems kind of like the lowest, maybe one of the lowest costs, like shoes are expensive.
Shoes, yeah.
I don't think you can, there's a no cost sport, right? Like,
Right.
the New Yorker also looked into this issue in 2014. Unsurprisingly, the more niche the event, as we were just kind of alluding to, the higher the disparity. So
Sure.
sports like
Yeah.
ski jumping, for example, require a ski jumping facility, which actually, when Nate and I were in Austria a couple Christmases ago, we went to Innsbruck and they have the Olympic ski jump there still. It was very cool. We walked up and it overlooks the whole city. It's absolutely beautiful. And they still have like the
Ooh.
Olympic rings up there. The Olympic Village is still there, like built out.
Oh, that's crazy cool.
People apparently still jump off of it sometimes, and we were really hoping that we would see some people like doing it because people train there, but no, we didn't see anybody go off of it, unfortunately.
Boo.
But it's really high. I was like,
Oh, yeah. Like, talk about superhuman weird shit that we do. Like, that's
Yeah.
also, like, part of it to me, like, the Olympics, the weirdness of, like, let's watch this human being jump 1,000 meters off of a tiny board
Yeah.
to certain death into water, you know, like,
Yeah. So yeah, the more niche the event, the higher the disparity. Disparities also start early, like in college sports. So per a 2021 study, college sports recruitment favors white suburban athletes, and the wealth and education levels of athletes' parents strongly affected the athlete's chance of getting into a college team, like a college program, athletics program. So your ability to be a college athlete, which can help you continue to train as you need to in order to get to the Olympics, is impacted by generational wealth, which, as we said, has been proven time and again to rest primarily with white people, at least in this country. About 23% of the most well-off high school varsity athletes go on to college sports teams, as opposed to only 9% of the economically poorest. Parents and families of budding athletes sometimes give up huge chunks of their own lives in order to nurture their kids' talent. Some move to other states, other countries to support their child and their success. While some sports are more expensive than others, as we've said, most cost some amount of money for equipment and training, not to mention the time it takes to constantly shuttle student athletes to practices, competitions. There are also entry fees for a lot of competitions. And the sacrifices aren't just monetary. The mother of Olympic skateboarder Bryce Wetstein missed saying goodbye to her dying sister in the hospital because she was traveling with her daughter for events.
yikes.
I mean, even stuff like gymnastics where you're like, oh, there's a gymnastics gym everywhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, but with the best coaches,
Right.
with the best equipment. And of course, it's not all on the parents, although for certain sports, as I mentioned, like gymnastics, it does tend to skew younger. And so it's much more on the parents. But like the athletes themselves also have to figure out how to finance their careers as they get older. And there have been pushes for Olympic athletes to be paid. But the IOC has said, well, no, that's up to the Olympic committees of individual countries.
Right.
So for one of my old jobs, I had the opportunity to interview a woman who worked she was like high up on the legal team of the Olympic Committee in the US. She was like, yeah, we're a nonprofit. We just have to fundraise around the clock like everybody else to just pay for our athletes, like medical care, mental health care. Our government doesn't fund any of it. Other
Wow.
governments do. Ours does not. But we're happy to claim the pride of the
Right.
athletes.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just like, I don't like that. It's such an American, like, well, you're on your own if you like the vessel you use to reach this kind of aptitude and like win the award. We're not going to take care of that, your body or your mind.
Yeah, and actually, if you leave your sport or take a pause, like Simone Biles, to take care of your mind, we're gonna fucking shame you
We are
about it.
going to drag your name through the dirt as a society and a country. What the hell was that? I hate us.
Oh, it was disgusting. Can you imagine the pressure of not only being an athlete at that level anyway, but being so famous and being young and black and a woman is all going to make every pressure you're dealing with much worse and more.
Exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you dare to take a step back, which had to be a difficult decision anyway.
On its
Like
own.
how many of us have felt like our career is our identity? And she knows that she has a time limit on how long she can do this also and make money
Yeah.
off of it. And what is she going to do after that? And so she decides to prioritize herself and take a break so she can probably partially figure that out and just recoup and just not have that pressure on her. And instead she gets all this backlash for like betraying America for not like being a team player. Fuck you. Unequivocally, fuck you.
Unequivocally. God, these new kids and their just newfangled ideas on how to go through this life. It's
God,
just,
they want fairness
it's obnoxious. Nobody
and
wants to
mental health
work
care.
anymore. Nobody
Oh,
wants to
that's
work
the
anymore.
same symptom. It's the same fucking shit.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work anymore, including Simone Biles, because
Including
she didn't do
Simone.
enough for us. She didn't get us enough. Glory. Thank you. We need
Get
more out
back
of
on
her.
the grind.
Yeah, and it's a mix of that and then like the attitude of like celebrities owing you anything.
Oh
Time,
my God.
attention,
Yeah.
blah, 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 etc. Simone Biles doesn't owe any of us jack shit. Athletes can, of course, make money in competitions leading up to the Olympics, and if they're lucky, they might get some sponsorship deals, but like none of that is guaranteed. The Olympic committees of most countries do offer financial rewards for athletes, but mostly only significant if you medal. Some countries offer massive rewards for medalists, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and 3 offer no monetary compensation to medalists. Those 3 countries are Great Britain, Norway, and Sweden. A couple of places said New Zealand doesn't either, but then other places said they do, so question mark on New Zealand. Great Britain and Norway do offer annual stipends to their athletes, though, so like
Okay.
not just medalists, like they're just like funding, which I like. That's better. Better to
That
support
makes more
all of the
sense. Yeah.
athletes than just like reward the highest ranking one, right? I couldn't find anything about that for Sweden, but they might have something similar. And the Norwegians, who are absolutely dominant in winter sports, also partner with other countries to share facilities, equipment. Their ski jumping facilities, for example, they're like, we got all the ski jumping shit, come check us out.
And that's chill. I like that.
But at this point, I would be remiss not to mention the Norway ski jumping scandal,
Yes,
aka
of course.
Penisgate.
Oh,
Have you heard about this?
no?
A couple of Norwegian ski jumpers were discovered to have manipulated their suits to give them more material, which means they can fly further when they're jumping. So like flying squirrel style. Right, the
Oh,
more
and that
material
can't
you
be
have,
allowed.
the farther you can fly. This manipulation happened particularly in the crotch area of the garments. And there is a rumor, which I have not been able to completely 100% confirm, but there is a rumor that some of the athletes were injecting fillers into their penises before suit fittings to falsely increase the amount of crotch fabric they needed in that area. So then when the fillers wear off, they've got excess fabric that helps them glide along and fly a little
It's
further.
not even going to give you enough of a...
It doesn't have to be that much. It just has to be, you just have to beat the other people there.
That's
Who are
insane.
Have
That's
their
actually
snug
insane.
crotch fitting suits. It was kind of brilliant because they were like, there was no way to figure out that there was excess material there unless you like disassembled the crotch of the garment. I don't know if they go to the same suit fitter every time, but do you think someone was like, Sven's dong is a little bigger than I remember it being
Then I remember
the
these
last time.
measurements being... No, and like, that's such an awkward thing to have to bring up too. Be like, I
Right.
noticed. Why are you so aware of
Right.
my
Are
penis
you paying
proportions,
Maybe it was warmer today than the last time.
ma'am or sir?
Madam. Sir or madam. Anyway, so the lack of pay in the Olympics posed an even larger difficulty back when the Olympics had a requirement of amateurism. So from its rebirth in 1896 all the way to 1988, professional athletes were not allowed to participate in the Olympics. And the amateurism requirement was purportedly to keep the corrupting influence of money out of the Olympics. But of course, what they were actually trying to keep out of the Olympics was poor people, read non-white people. Because who can afford to train all day without being paid to do so? Rich people. For a while, the amateurism requirement served its purpose, and the games were largely the domain of white elites. But in 1912, a non-wealthy 25-year-old Native American man of the Sac and Fox Nation showed up at the Stockholm Olympics and absolutely crushed everyone else. That man was, of course, our boo, Jim Thorpe. As I already mentioned, Larkin did an amazing episode about Jim Thorpe. I'm not going to rehash everything here, but to summarize, Jim Thorpe is widely acknowledged as one of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen. At the Stockholm Olympic Games in 1912, he swept the pentathlon and decathlon in an incredible performance that saw him become the first Native American to win Olympic gold for the U.S. And of course, he did it with 2 mismatched shoes because his shoes mysteriously went missing before his events. In 1913, the IOC learned from a dickhead reporter that Jim had participated in 2 seasons of semi-pro baseball in 1909 and 1910, and in a move that set a remarkably harsh precedent for what was considered professional, Jim Thorpe was stripped of his Olympic medals. And they were restored in 1982, long after his death. His medal loss was the first time the rule about amateur status was levied against a competitor, and as far as I could find, it only happened one more time in 1964 to a pair of German figure skaters, and they also had their medals restored in 1987. The pretense for Jim Thorpe's shaming was amateurism, but of course the real problem was racism. The IOC and U.S. Amateur Athletic Union seemed particularly motivated to take glory away from the young sack and fox man who ran literal circles around white athletes while wearing 2 ill-fitting mismatched shoes. Jim had threatened the status quo. You weren't supposed to be able to be good enough to compete in the Olympics without having the wealth and privilege to train full-time. But he had managed to qualify for and absolutely crush in the Olympics while starting training only in spring for the Summer Olympics. And you know what? Going back to what I said about how like the games probably weren't founded by Hercules or whatever, like Jim Thorpe makes me believe that maybe Hercules existed because like Jim Thorpe might be a demigod.
He might be one of those.
Like Katie Ledecky, like incredible athlete, obviously, but very, very niche, right? She's like, she's an incredible swimmer. Someone like Jim Thorpe, who it was just literally, if it was a sport, he wasn't just okay. Like he was brilliant.
Golf, handball, tennis, whatever it is, put him in front of it. He'll kill at it. If it has to do with moving your body.
Can you imagine? Anyway, I'm not going to go there.
I thought about it.
And generous.
Very generous. Okay, we're going to stop. The whiskey and the Jim Thorpe talk has to be
we
off
can't
the
combine
podcast.
whiskey and Jim Thorpe. We should have a separate podcast that's just the Jim Thorpe Thirst podcast. Thirstin' for Thorpe.
Thirsting for Thorpe. We'll have guests.
Tell us the thing that makes you the most horny about Jim Thorpe. What a fitting tribute to a legendary man. The legacy of racism in the Olympics does not begin or end with Jim, though. In 1904, 8 years before the 1912 Olympics, the Olympics was held in St. Louis, and it coincided with the World's Fair, which is going to get its own episode one of these days, because the shit that has happened around World's Fairs has been fucking bonkers.
Insane.
World's Fairs are events that were particularly popular from 1851 to around World War I. They were held all over the place, all over the world. They were big displays of like everything going on in the world at the time, all the new developments. So like months-long exhibitions about science, culture, industry, all sorts of stuff. And they were referred to as World's Fairs actually primarily here in the US. Everywhere else they were called expositions. Because the fair and the Olympics overlapped, they decided to coordinate on some exhibitions labeled Anthropology Days. What resulted was such a racist sham of an event that to this day it is contested whether or not it counts as a legitimate Olympics. Larkin, you will be unsurprised to learn that the main organizer of this debacle was none other than James Sullivan, the head of the Amateur Athletic Union.
I am so not shocked.
Yes, James Sullivan was one of the main orchestrators of stripping Jim Thorpe of his medals after the 1912 Olympics. So human mayonnaise smear James Sullivan decided to link the games with a series of quote-unquote experiments with an eye towards demonstrating white superiority. Like, that is his explicit goal. That is what he wants. Obviously, there was a lot of racism at the time, but there were also a lot of people who were kind of marveling at like the physical prowess of Native Americans, as well as indigenous populations elsewhere, like Africans, Filipinos, etc. Like people were fascinated by their physical ability. And Sullivan didn't like that because he was like, white people are the best at everything, including athletics.
Okay.
Just the title of White Men Can't Jump would have really set him off. So you can see why Jim Thorpe's performance at the 1912 games really pissed him off.
Really? I mean, you've given me the backstory. No wonder it was so vociferously against him being there.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was very specifically focused on Native populations. As I learned this, I was like, oh. Anthropology Days included quote unquote living exhibits. These were displays of villages of various Native peoples from around the world. Another term for these displays that is commonly used is human zoos, because that's basically what they were.
They were. Okay.
Yeah. These had been happening for a long time in Europe and America. Some of them were done more sensitively than others. A lot of them were just blatantly racist. Like that was the goal, was to show how non-white people landed closer to animals than to humans.
Right.
You know, when you go to a zoo and they're like, these are gorillas. Their closest relatives are X. It was like that, except it was like, here is a human from this area of the world. They are somewhere between apes and humans, but definitely not really people.
No.
So the largest of these human zoos at the 1904 Olympics was a 47-acre stretch filled with 1,000 Filipinos from at least 10 different ethnic groups. Among them were a group of people from the Igorot tribe, and the Igorots were a big crowd draw because they were advertised as one of the most primitive tribes, and that's what people were fascinated with. So Sullivan wanted to put on a series of events where Native people would participate in games and races, not directly against white people. The records that they had from these games and races would be compared to the records that we had that existed of white people. And then, of course, in Sullivan's mind, it was like, well, and then the white people will be superior. They'll win. In order for this to happen, though, he needed native athletes. So he had people go out and recruit from the human zoos at the fair and the Philippine reservation and the Indian school, which sickeningly was on the grounds of the fair. Like these pop-up villages were built around the Indian school. Implies that students at the school who had been stolen from their families and were being tortured in these institutions were like part of the display.
Oh, that's totally implied.
The students at the school were like playing lacrosse and stuff, and like people were like, oh, look at them play lacrosse.
Oh my fucking God. I just wish for death.
These scores that were achieved by the Native folks who participated were lower than historical performances by white people because they weren't trained athletes. They weren't taking it seriously because they knew it was a sham and it was racist. But of course, Sullivan was like, look, this shows. Proven. But like during the day, just in these made up villages, and as I mentioned, like at the school, the Native people would play their sports and they would do competitions among themselves and like marksmanship and races, lacrosse, all that stuff. They also did, between the games, they did dances and shows and stuff, which the Native people themselves actually organized. And I bet those were really cool to see.
Oh, I bet.
On the first official day of actual Olympic competition, Sullivan had the marathon as one of the events, but he still decided to make it an experiment in dehydration. The marathon was run in August in 91-degree heat. For our metric friends, that's 33 degrees. And Sullivan decided to limit the water stop to 1 along the entire route. And for those of you who, like me, don't know how far a marathon is, it's 26 miles. This one was probably closer to 24, but still 24 miles, 91-degree heat, 1 water station. Because this is one of the actual Olympic events, there were also white athletes involved in this one. It also included the first Native American Olympian ever, Franklin Pierce. Pierce was in the lead at first, but he did have to drop out eventually due to the extreme heat. The winner, who was an experienced marathoner named Thomas Hicks, had to be given a mixture of egg whites, brandy, and strychnine sulfite to get him across the finish line, and he literally almost died. His time is the slowest in Olympic history by half an hour.
Half an hour?
Half an hour. Not a few seconds, not a few minutes. Half an hour. He literally almost died from this event. His trainers were like just pouring shit into his mouth to just get him to keep going because he couldn't have water.
That's insane.
And he was like crossed the finish line and was like dead to the world. Like he was not okay. Notably, this was also the first time Black Africans had been in the Olympic Games. 2 Tswana tribesmen from South Africa also participated in the marathon, Lynn Tonyane and Jan Mashiani, and they finished 9th and 12th. Not bad spots. But they probably would have been in even better spots if they hadn't been chased off the route by a wild dog.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There's so much about, again, this is one of the things that I was like, this marathon event alone could be its own episode. There was another man who ate rotten apples and fell asleep in he had to like lie down in an orchard on the side of the road. It was like, because he couldn't have water. So he was like, oh, fruit.
Yeah,
you know,
that has water.
But they were rotten. And he was, I think, the first Cuban to participate. And he didn't even have proper like shoes or shorts or anything. And it was so hot. He was like in pants. And I read somewhere that like some of the other competitors like helped him out and like cut his pants so that he could be in shorts and like maybe loaned him shoes. Anyway, yeah. So the whole thing was a farce.
Nightmare farce. What the hell?
Yeah. So now let's talk about one of the iconic moments in every Olympics, the relay of the Olympic torch. We all know it. We've all seen it. It starts in one country and it goes all the way to like the country where the games are being held, passed from athlete to athlete, and the final person runs it into the stadium and lights the Olympic flame and officially kicks off the game. It's fun.
It feels
good
good.
stuff. So the Olympic flame as a symbol of the Olympics was introduced in the Netherlands in the 1932 games. So it's not like, doesn't go back to ancient Greek tradition or anything like that. It's like, it's a modern invention. Quick correction here. The Netherlands games where the torch was introduced were actually in 1928, not 1932. Sorry about that. And the torch relay was introduced in 1936. And Larkin, would you like to guess who came up with the concept of the Olympic torch relay?
Is it someone I know?
Oh, yeah. It's someone we all are familiar with. The Olympics were in Berlin.
Oh, I don't like this. No.
It was literally Hitler.
No.
It was literally Hitler. Hitler came up with the idea to kindle the flame in Greece and then have it carried to Berlin, where the 1936 games were held. And as we know, the Nazis were all about propaganda. They used the games as a massive propaganda opportunity.
Kate, no.
Hitler came up with the Olympic torch relay.
Kate, no. Kate. That's my favorite part.
It's your favorite part? Too bad. Hitler
Too
invented
fucking
it.
bad. It's not now.
It's one of my favorite facts that I've ever come up with on this show.
I need a moment.
I'll give you this moment. I will sip my whiskey.
What the fuck? That's insane. Yep. Okay.
In my head, I was like, yeah, the Olympic relay. It's like some ancient Greek thing that they used to do, and
yeah.
they would run it super far and then like light the. I mean, no.
And it has to do with, Prometheus or something like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it was Hitler, and the American people called for a boycott of the games because Hitler and the Nazis had been pulling a lot of shit for 3 years at this point. The Nuremberg race laws, as I said, inspired by Jim Crow laws, were in effect by this point, which stripped Jewish people of their citizenship, and Americans saw U.S. participation in the games as sanctioning Hitler and the Nazis' opinions and actions. If you recall from our Charles Lindbergh episode, these are the Olympic Games that Charles Lindbergh and Anne Lindbergh attended as guests of Hermann Goering. Mm-hmm.
No, it's all coming together.
So when the U.S. announced it would be participating anyway, the pressure went from the United States in general to individual athletes being pressured not to attend, not to participate. But some black athletes thought this was a little rich, coming from the country that was still actively enforcing Jim Crow laws.
Yep.
Our fascism inspired the fucking Nazis. These black athletes decided not to sit out possibly their only opportunity, by the way, to like participate in the Olympic Games and get an Olympic medal. And one of the athletes who chose to participate was track star Jesse Owens. And his decision to compete was and remains controversial. But, America really, had no right to be throwing stones at Nazi Germany from the glass house that fucking slavery and Jim Crow built. And I'm not saying that solidarity isn't important or that it's like we should all just be like, well, I went through it, so other people have to go through it too, or anything like that. And I don't think that's what Owens or any of these black athletes were saying either. I can't say whether or not he or they made the right decision. That's not my call. I'm just saying I get it. I understand. If the 1936 games had been held in America and Jesse Owens was like, I'm not going to run because of the treatment of black people in America, he would have been absolutely vilified.
Oh, immediately.
Jesse Owens and many other U.S. athletes went to the 1936 games in Berlin, and Jesse Owens was an absolute force in track and field, and he showed the fuck up at the 1936 Olympics in front of Hitler and Goering and Charles Lindbergh and all these other people who were convinced that he was inferior because of his race. He won 4 gold medals at the games, the 100-meter dash, long jump, 200-meter dash, and 400-meter relay. This made him the first American ever to win 4 gold medals in a single Olympiad. And he also set a bunch of world records. In fact, he once broke 5 world records and tied a 6th in 45 minutes.
Are you...
After coming off a back injury. It was like when he was qualifying for the Olympics, I think. He had just had a serious back injury, and he was like, I don't know if I'm up to scratch anymore. And then he broke 5 world records and tied a 6th in 45 minutes.
What? It's insane.
Again, Hercules might have existed. That's all I'm saying.
Several different times.
So one of the reasons that the boycott didn't go through in 1936 was because of a man named Avery Brundage, literally an Olympic-level racist. Brundage was the head of the American Olympic Committee in 1936, and of course a big advocate of amateurism, as we're learning means racist. By 1968, he was the head of the IOC, and he used that position to ruin the careers of 2 Black athletes who dared to speak out about inequality. The 1968 Olympics were held in Mexico City. Athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos had helped to organize the Olympic Project for Human Rights, which was calling for a boycott of the Games to protest apartheid in South Africa. And both Tommy and John had grown up as Black athletes seeing racism firsthand. Tommy had grown up in poverty in Texas in the 40s and 50s. John was raised in Harlem by a Jamaican mother and a South Carolinian father. And for another piece of context about the 1968 Games, Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated earlier in 1968.
Right.
When the U.S. once again refused to boycott the Olympics, Tommy and John went. They went as athletes to compete. In the 200-meter dash, Tommy took gold and John took bronze. Tommy set a new world record while he was at it. And when they took the podium to get their medals, they wore black socks with no shoes. Tommy had a black scarf around his neck. They also each wore one black glove, Tommy on his right hand and John on his left. And as they stood on the podium while the U.S. national anthem played, Tommy and John raised their black gloved fists into the air, a now iconic image of an unprecedented moment of protest. This had never been done before on a stage like this. It was, and I'm sure we've all seen that picture.
Oh, yeah.
And it gives me chills just thinking about it. Like I have
Yep.
goosebumps right now just picturing that image.
Me too.
The bravery it takes to do something like that on a world stage
Yeah.
and know that you're going to get taken to hell for it.
Oh, yeah.
Within literal hours, Brundage and the IOC condemned the athletes. 2 days later, they were suspended by the U.S. team and sent home. The media trashed them. They couldn't get a job in U.S. sports anywhere. They both received abuse, death threats. Tommy says it's the reason that his marriage ended. It
Wow.
destroyed his life, like his career
yeah,
and his marriage.
yeah.
Despite being literally the fastest man in the world, Tommy was banned from national and international competitions, costing him his entire career. But he kept speaking out. Tommy and John both did. Tommy earned his master's degree in sociology in 1974. John now holds multiple honorary doctorate degrees, and his Instagram bio is amazing. It says world's fastest humanitarian, which I
Oh, my
love.
God.
So Tommy and John received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award in 2008. And when Tommy was asked in, I believe, 2012 whether he regrets doing the salute, he said the only regret was that it had to be done.
Fucking.
Mm-hmm. And incidentally, at the next Olympics, 2 more Black athletes, Vince Matthews and Wayne Collette, were alternatingly like smiling and expressionless on the podium when they won at the 1972 Munich Games. And they were basically like not taking it seriously enough for the stuffy higher
Right.
ups. I think one of them, I can't remember if it was Wayne or Vince, like twirled his medal on his finger as they were leaving
Ooh.
the podium, and people were like, "Ooh!" Like,
Oh,
makes you think of that Simpsons joke when the man like opens his eyes and like his monocle falls in his drink, and he's like, "That's the second monocle this week. I simply must stop being so horrified." Like that's the vibe. Vince and Wayne said, "Yes, we did it to protest the treatment of Black Americans," and Brundage had them both banned from the Olympics for life.
See you in hell, Brundage.
Absolutely. In the Denny's parking lot, you and James Sullivan can come in your old timey. I picture them in like those singlets, wrestling singlets. And then
Oh my God. Yes. Tall socks and everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know this is already a lot. We've been recording for almost 2 hours, but there is one more thing I want to talk about because it is highly relevant right now. And I want to discuss how the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics changed the way that the city of Los Angeles was policed. This is relevant because the Summer Olympics is returning to Los Angeles in 2028.
Oh, it is.
And
Okay.
yes, is already having a potential negative effect on the city. So relevant. It's also a nice little alley-oop with the main topic that I'll be talking about in my bonus episode this month. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. Again, woefully quick rundown, or maybe woefully slow, depending on how tired you are of hearing me talk at this point and how long.
Never.
The LAPD has been notoriously racist and awful for basically its entire existence. This can be said, of course, in general of policing in the United States, but LA is a good place to focus because it has truly been a hotbed of corruption and over-policing for a very, very long time. It's like poster child for,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you think LAPD, you're like, ooh, uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. But really just one bad apple, though, right?
That's what I used to say when I was ignorant, because my dad was a cop, and it took me a minute to disentangle my feelings about my dead father from what people were saying about cops in general on the internet, which is what I was saying at the beginning. We all have our come to Jesus moment, you know?
But hey, you did the work.
Thanks to people who were very patient with me and who continued to talk to me about it. Scandal after scandal has come out of the LAPD. In 1960, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights had to hold a hearing about police brutality in the city. 1960, bear that in mind as things continue to go. In the 80s, the LAPD were caught spying on a ton of people without authorization. The 90s saw incidents like the beating of Rodney King, the O.J. Simpson trial, where it was revealed that LAPD officer Mark Furman rampantly used the N-word to describe black suspects on tape. There was also a massive scandal at the end of the 90s regarding the anti-gang crash unit, which was actually operating like a gang itself, selling cocaine from evidence lockers and torturing suspects. These are just some of the fun facts about the
Just
LAPD.
the highlights.
The crash unit, that one I just mentioned, was founded by the guy who was put in charge of the LAPD ahead of the 1984 Olympics, Police Chief Daryl Gates. Under Gates, as under his predecessor, the LAPD was unflinchingly and unapologetically hard on non-white communities. Transcripts of radio interactions between officers and dispatch and officers and each other showed that officers were very comfortable saying horrific things about black and brown people on a regular basis while on duty. And they were doing stop and frisk before we knew what stop and frisk was. They were just like, you're black or brown, I'm stopping you because something's going on, right? And I'm going to figure out what it is after I've stopped you.
I'm going to make it up once
Yeah. The CRASH unit. CRASH stands for Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums.
Are you joking my ass? What?
Let's hear the racism in it, can't you?
I had no idea what street hoodlums?
Street hoodlums. Community resources also. Like, we're doing it for the community.
Oh.
Jump into the ocean off the Santa Monica Pier. Okay, so
there are sharks and radioactive toxins.
And maybe some poop into your mouth. Okay. So in the lead up to the 1984 games, there was a ton of concern about terrorism. Several major terrorist attacks had happened in recent years, including one at the Munich Games, so security was top of mind. But of course, Gates focused less on actual terrorism and more on clearing out all of the unhoused and non-white people. So working with more than 50 state, federal, and local law enforcement agencies, Gates transformed the LAPD from a police force to a paramilitary force. Under the auspice of preventing terrorism, they acquired machine guns, infrared-enhanced technology, surveillance tech, and airport scanners. They also started a state-of-the-art database to track tourists and travelers. Where the games were held were in South Central. South Central is a well-known area of gang activity, but since when, you may ask, have gang members committed acts of terrorism? The answer is pretty much never. A 2016 study actually showed that there is very little evidence that gang members tend to get radicalized or join terrorist organizations. And in fact, quote, most gang members are characterized by the lack of a political or religious orientation. If you're wondering where I got this study, what woke website? It's the U.S. Department of Justice website. Gates conducted massive sweeps of the area ahead of and during the Olympic Games. He cleared out, unhoused people. He targeted communities of color. Mass arrests were carried out in South Central to protect the Olympics, quote unquote. The people being arrested were often just suspected of being gang members, meaning they were black or brown, and a cop decided they were probably in a gang. Ring any bells with what's happening right now?
Don't know what you could possibly be describing.
No parallels whatsoever.
No. I refuse to see it.
What started during the 1984 Olympics carried over well after they were done. All those machine guns and the fancy tech that the LAPD had acquired didn't go away. They weren't taken back after the Olympics were over. So the LAPD, and particularly their SWAT team, remained more of a paramilitary than a police force from that point on. And in 1987, they used what they had learned from the 1984 Olympics to conduct the subtly named Operation Hammer. You're not even trying.
It's one of them was like, this would be so fucking cool.
Oh,
because they're G.I. Joe loving, stupid boy children.
Yep.
who want to drive around in a tank, which is exactly who we're dealing with right now.
This operation started in response to a drive-by shooting in South Central where several people were killed while attending a birthday party on like a front lawn. Really tragic. But rather than go in with a scalpel to try and catch the people who had committed this individual crime, Gates went in with a hammer. Operation Hammer ran from 1987 to 1990, enacting mass raids and arrests. The peak happened in April of 1988 when 1,453 people were arrested in South Central in a single weekend.
What?
Yeah, almost 1,500 people in South Central alone, particularly in South Central, not Los Angeles as a whole, South Central. A few months later in August, cops conducted a massive raid on 2 apartment buildings, and they caused tons of property damage. They were looking for drugs, was the pretense.
Sure.
88 cops get sent in to these 2 buildings. They go in, they barge into people's apartments, they are smashing things up, they're putting holes in walls, they're turning over furniture, they are destroying all sorts of shit. Residents were rounded up, beaten, and humiliated. What did they find during this raid for drugs? Less than 6 ounces of weed and less than 1 ounce of cocaine. Seems like a really great use of the time of 88 police officers.
And money and the trauma of children that I'm sure were also living in those homes.
By the time Operation Hammer ended in 1990, it's estimated that over 50,000 people had been arrested in the raids, disproportionately black, of course, and many of whom had no drug or gang affiliation.
But of course.
Oh my God. And but of course. And if you think things are going to be any different in 2028, you are a bigger optimist than I am. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti recently enacted Ordinance 41.18, an amendment to an old law preventing people from sitting, lying, or sleeping on city sidewalks. And the amendment specifies the places that these activities are forbidden. And it's basically everywhere. It's like within 3 feet of a fire hydrant, within 5 feet of a driveway, within 7 feet of a, municipal whatever. He didn't say it was like to make things better for the Olympics, but lots of people are like, oh, he's trying to like clean up the streets.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the ordinance starts by saying this is to address the homelessness crisis or because of the homelessness crisis. And it's like, how are you addressing it? By throwing people in jail? Because that doesn't fucking work and it's cruel. And like maybe build more affordable housing or more community resources and support networks for people. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I could go on a whole big rant about how useless and fucking horrible the criminalization of homelessness is because I worked in that area in LA. But I will save that for another episode, probably.
For another time.
So yeah, I think that the 2028 Olympics will be another excuse for the LAPD to do mass arrests, probably assisted by ICE, depending on where their funding is at the time, if we haven't managed to abolish them, which I'm going to go ahead and guess we will not have. ICE is already all over LA. LA is fighting back. It's not getting talked about as much because of all the coverage in Minnesota, but LA has also been living under heavy ICE presence since the same time as Minnesota. And obviously they've been living with over-policing and corrupt policing for as long as the city has existed. Like, that distrust and fear and animosity toward the police is in Los Angeles's bones. It is part of that city. And they have been mad for a really long time. Very angry. And they've been showing up in solidarity with Minneapolis. They've been getting tear gas. They've been getting rubber bullets in them. They've been getting arrested and shipped off to God knows where, like, for peacefully protesting. So I just want to say, shout out to LA for also being out there and protecting your neighbors. I know it's not getting as much coverage, but like, we see you. You're also our top listenership city. So like, we love you.
Shout out to y'all.
Yeah, we see what you're going through as well and like appreciate the support because LA's showing the fuck up too. And I know Seattle is too.
Yeah. I've been very proud of this city.
I'm proud of all of us.
Me
People
too.
are showing up all over the place. Okay, so this was my longest script ever, as I said. I didn't even talk about sexism. I didn't talk about the economic effects the Olympics has on the cities where it's held, which are not always positive. I didn't talk about the issue of sexual assault and abuse in the Olympic villages or how STIs spread there like crazy because everyone's fucking each other all the time. I didn't talk about Larry Nassar. We might just need to make a spin-off podcast. Maybe it can be tied into our Jim Thorpe spin-off. Respectfully Horny for Jim Thorpe, a podcast about Olympic bullshit. But there we go. I hope I taught you some stuff.
That's a great start to this apparently non-exhaustive topic. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I learned so much. And it's so boggling. The Olympics have been such like a big part of our global cultural community. And
Yeah.
like it feels like a joining sometimes, and it feels like, oh, we're together in this fight. But to have that as corrupt and that as a fucking the torch lighting itself, it's all a farce. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
in a simulation and it actually sucks.
There's a committee to abolish the Olympics, like,
Really?
because it's always been racist and horrible.
And
Like,
horrible. And like,
and I don't know how I feel about it because, like, I think that these athletes should be celebrated. I just wish that more athletes who should qualify for it were able to be there. And that's the thing, is that
yeah.
it's not always the best of the best of the best. It's the best of the best who have been able to afford to train to become the best of the best. It's not completely about merit or skill. It's also about wealth.
Right. And that's not representative of what feats your amazing human body can accomplish. Like
Right.
that's you know, I'm sure there's somebody in a quiet little town somewhere in the world that is probably the best at something and we'll never see them, like, and that's stupid.
It's always been elitist and white and a tool of propaganda.
What a fucking bummer.
Sometimes we'll be like, what if we run out of things to talk about?
Yeah, and
Oh,
then we're
now
like,
it's
oh
ruined.
no, everything's awful all the time. Thank you.
You're welcome. So welcome. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. I hope you're all doing okay. If you're not, I hope this helped in some way, either to galvanize you, make you angry, or distract you at least somewhat for a little while. I know it all leads back. All roads lead back to fascism. But, you know, even if it just gave you facts that you can use to drag other people down with you
Yeah.
during the Olympics. Don't do that to good people. Like, don't do that. Maybe to your enemies. But to, like, don't ruin indiscriminately into the crowd, you know? Like,
Into the crowd.
unless they are like you and they collect horrible facts, like
Right.
stamps, like all of us weirdos.
Like us creeps over here who never want to have true happiness.
No. I don't want anyone else to have it either. you
No.
know? Any final thoughts?
There are no illegal people on stolen land, and fuck ICE. And I love you. Have a great day.
Great final thoughts. Perfect conclusion. Hey, one more toast. Fuck ICE.
Fuck ICE.